Yeah!
Back on the bench with Noisy Boy FPV. This is just a little tip really. I'm sure some of the X-Class guys and Beast-Class guys know this, but always continually unhappy with the as150 connector. Never really a satisfactory amount of friction on that connector. This problem can, inside the positive terminal, if you can see that black ring, the first piece of the bullet, when it comes into contact with the female connector, and that touches there and you get first contact, that first ring is there's a capacitor built inside that bullet basically, and that arrests spark, and then from there on you pass down onto the main body of the bullet where your main juice flows. The female connector, I've soldered a lot of these now, and every single one of the female connections, it's just not a confidence inspiring amount of friction. So just a little top tip really, after you've solder filled and attached your big 10 gauge wire, what I do is just come to the base of the splits in the flutes, just give them a little squeeze there, little squeeze on each one, little squeeze, and then screw your bullet back on. And I'm pretty sure if these are not a really tight fit, then you're going to run into maybe some current drain problems. Now that is a tight plug. Wow, and that is what you want. You've got a lot of money's worth of craft in the air and you're pulling big amps, you want a tight bind. That is super snug. Just from crimping at the base of the floats there, little bit of pressure, you don't have to go crazy, and then it gives your plugs a confidence inspiring connection. And I've done the same on these as well. So now when I plug these big boys in, that last little bit there, look, wow, and that's what you want, that's what you're after. You want that to be tight. Oh shit, knocked my rig off. We're back. So yeah, just a little tip really for the as150 plugs. It's you know, they are good plugs, they come out of the packaging, everything's good, but as with most things in this hobby, things need a little tweak. So, you know, we're talking heavy ampage, we're talking heavy pins and connectors, so just don't overlook it, because you certainly don't want a flare up. And what I've had happen is one that was slack, if you draw current through this tip instead of the main body, this capacitor explodes, and I have blown one up. And at the end of the day, it's all about how tight these two pins are bound up together, and you can hear it. This one I have give a squeeze, you can hear the friction. When it's tight like that, you've got no problems. So I did once on one of my 10 inches suffer a little bit of a stuttering on full throttle, and that's what it was. So you sort of take it for granted that you just plug these together and everything's fine. I have had to do it with XT60s. I've had to splay the male pins before so they grip inside the sockets tighter. But yeah, you can't overlook, you don't want resistance at these points when you've got big current flowing. So I'm sure all the X-Class guys and Beast-Class guys, but if you're new to this and the bigger stuff game, you know, this is something you don't really want to be overlooking, because when you're drawing juice through these at full throttle, there's a lot of current flowing. given that there's potentially up to 200 amp going to each arm at times. This thing pulls like on a snap roll. When you're checking black box log, it's shooting up to over 400 amp, only for a split second, but that just shows the veracity of the current drain on one of these big fellas. And you've got to be mindful of that. You cannot have resistance on your connectors. So just to sort of pass on that little tip, really, nothing major. If you find any of my information useful, or you'd like me to elaborate on other areas of base class and muscle quad builds, hit me up with a comment. Don't hesitate to ask. I help where I can. I've helped a few people set up the custom APD firmware flash, and if anybody's considering doing that and you want any guidance and tips where to get your firmwares from using the STM flash loader demonstrator or anything like that along them lines, you contact me at Noisyboy FPV, and I'm only happy to help. So that's just it for this one, guys. Noisy Boy signing out.
Yeah!